Welcome to Sleepy Finance, your peaceful sanctuary for soothing financial stories designed to gently guide you into restful sleep. Before we begin tonight's journey, if you find calm and value here, please softly tap the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. It supports our quiet mission and ensures you never miss a serene evening with us. Now take a deep, relaxing breath, hold it for just a moment, and release slowly, letting your tensions drift away. Tonight, our story brings us back to New York City, 1929, a time of promise and cautionary wisdom. Imagine it's an October evening in Manhattan. The streets are slick with rain. Light from shop fronts and gas lamps ripples gently across the cobblestones, and the air carries a chill hinting at winter's approach. In this soft gloom, a young man named Anthony pulls his coat tighter against the wind. He's just 17, small for his age but sharp-eyed, and his cap is soaked from hours of walking. In one hand, he clutches a satchel of sealed envelopes, telegrams he's delivered from one end of the financial district to the other. Anthony works for Western Union, running messages between brokerage houses, banks, and private clients. He's fast, polite, and quiet, which is why the brokers like him. They say he's got an honest face, and that's rare in this part of town. Each envelope he delivers today is tied to fortunes, some rising, some trembling. Most of the men he hands messages to are too distracted to notice him. They're staring at ticker tapes, scribbling notes, barking orders across desks. In the heart of Wall Street, the mood is jubilant, electric even. Stocks are at all-time highs. Radio Corporation of America has doubled. The Dow Jones has crossed 350. A broker in pinstripes pats Anthony on the shoulder and tells him with a wink, "It's never been this good, kid, not ever." Another calls out to a colleague, joking about retiring before 30. The smell of cigars, ink, and damp wool fills the room. But Anthony isn't just watching these people, he's listening. And what he hears isn't all confidence. There are whispers beneath the bravado. Older men with lined faces and careful voices speak in hushed tones about margin loans, about paper wealth, about clients who are in too deep. He doesn't know all the terms, but he knows the feeling. It's the same way his father used to mutter before the winter coal bill came due. Anthony's own world is modest. He lives with his mother and younger sister in a tenement on the Lower East Side. Their apartment is small and drafty, but his wages help keep the stove lit. Every Friday, he brings home a few coins wrapped in cloth. His mother smooths each one out on the table and writes figures in a lined notebook. They have no stocks, no accounts, no portfolios, but they save slowly. Still, as he walks past the grand columns of the New York Stock Exchange each day, Anthony feels something stir in him, a mix of awe and unease. It's as if the buildings themselves are humming, vibrating with ambition. Men in polished shoes and wool coats walk with brisk purpose, their words full of capital and dividends, futures and spreads. To Anthony, it sounds like a foreign language, but one he wants to learn. One broker, Mr. Harrow, has taken a liking to him. Harrow is older, quieter than the rest, and often pauses to chat when Anthony makes deliveries. "Remember this," he told Anthony once, holding up a fountain pen like a priest with a relic. "It's not the stock you own that matters, it's the story you believe about it. If the story isn't true, the price won't save you." At the time, Anthony didn't understand, but he wrote it down on a slip of paper and kept it folded in his satchel. That evening, Anthony stops by a newsstand before heading home. The headlines shout optimism. Record highs again. Economy continues to boom into fall. The man behind the counter shakes his head. "I seen this before," he mutters. "When it gets too high, it always comes down." Anthony nods politely, but the words stay with him. Back at home, Anthony hangs his coat to dry and eats dinner with his mother and sister, split pea soup and half a loaf of bread. His mother asks about his day, and he shrugs. Busy, same as always. But as he lies in bed later, the city's pulse still in his ears, he thinks about the glint in the brokers' eyes, the weight in their voices. He imagines their lives, their risk, their reward. The rain taps against the window. Somewhere in the city, ticker machines are still clattering, printing a future that seems only to rise. But deep inside, Anthony wonders, what happens when it stops? He dreams of questions, of markets he doesn't yet understand, of people whose lives seem ruled by flickering lines of numbers and endless paper promises. He wakes briefly at 3 a.m. to the low whistle of a train echoing through the empty streets. Then he falls back asleep, unaware that in just a few days, those paper promises will turn to dust for many. But tonight, he rests. The wind softens, the rain slows, and Anthony dreams in silence. The next morning begins not with a bang but a murmur. A hazy gray light seeps through the curtainless window, casting a soft glow on the cracked plaster walls. Anthony rises quietly so as not to wake his mother and sister, whose breathing fills the small room with a gentle rhythm. He dresses by memory, worn boots, wool slacks, his one good shirt, and moves to the kitchen to light the stove. The clink of the matchbox sounds loud in the silence. Outside, the city stirs slowly. Wagons splash through puddles left by the previous night's rain, and the grocer on the corner hauls open his steel gate with a groan. Anthony eats a quick slice of bread with jam, shoulders his satchel, and steps into the chill morning. He walks with practiced speed but not urgency, his breath visible in the crisp air. He stops for a moment at Battery Park, standing near the rail and looking out at the gray water. The harbor is dotted with ships, cargo vessels and ferry boats, tugboats puffing along in rhythmic chugs. It smells of salt and coal and distant places. In that moment of stillness, he thinks about everything he has overheard, all the names, all the numbers, all the money-changing hands that he will never see. He wonders, how does something so invisible, confidence, speculation, belief, build towers this tall, draw crowds this large, and create such noise? And if it's all built on stories, what happens when people stop believing them? Then he turns back toward the narrow streets of the financial district, telegrams to deliver, brokers to observe, and the slow unwinding of something he can't yet name but feels is beginning to unravel. He walks back into the shadowed streets, where steam rises from grates and the street lamps still cast long morning shadows. On a quiet corner he passes the bakery, its windows fogged with warmth, and pauses as the scent of fresh bread reminds him of simpler mornings when he was a boy and his father was still alive. He thinks of how his father used to speak of money, not with fear or awe, but with caution, like one speaks of the sea. "It can carry you far," his father once said, "but it'll drown you too if you forget how deep it goes." Anthony had laughed then, but now he understood. There was depth here, not just in dollars and debts, but in decisions and dreams. Passing the marble pillars of another investment firm, Anthony sees a janitor polishing brass door handles. He nods a greeting. The man nods back, tired but dignified. Everyone has a part in the machine, Anthony thinks. Some turn the gears, some oil them, some send the messages that move the world. And in this moment, in this city, on the edge of a change no one yet sees, Anthony walks on, quiet but observant, ready to notice everything. End of Act 1. Expansion. Act 2. The euphoria builds. The days that follow feel like a golden stretch of endless sunlight, even if the sky outside remains clouded and gray. Anthony, now attuned to the energy humming through Wall Street, notices the change. Not a pause, not a downturn, but a buzzing swell. It's as if the air has grown brighter, lighter, charged with promise. Brokers greet one another with boisterous confidence. Up another 10 points today. Steel's going to the moon. The words drift across the floors like champagne bubbles, light, frothy, intoxicating. Anthony carries telegrams bearing record profits, massive trades, and overnight riches. One envelope he delivers contains news of a young man barely 22 who made enough in 2 weeks to buy his father a mansion. He begins to see the shift not just in numbers but in posture. Clerks now swagger, assistants wear tailored coats. Restaurants near the exchange hum with laughter and fast orders. Credit is extended like handshakes, freely and without question. In the corner of a brokerage room, Anthony overhears a heated conversation. If it's rising, buy it. Why question it? A man insists. Another shrugs. Margin's only dangerous if it goes down, but it won't. Not this year. Their voices are laced with conviction, but their eyes flicker, just briefly, with something harder to name. Anthony finds a strange comfort in the rhythm of it all. The shuffle of shoes, the soft tick of pocket watches, the ceaseless hiss of paper torn from the ticker machine. He moves among giants in their moment of triumph. And yet, he notices the signs of strain. The messengers now run faster. The clerks double-check figures more frequently. At night, he passes a light still burning in the windows of offices long after the trading floor has gone dark. One afternoon, Mr. Harrow calls Anthony aside. His desk is cluttered with reports. "They're saying this is the new era," Harrow says quietly. "But the market doesn't know that. The market only knows what people believe. And sometimes, Anthony, people believe too much." Anthony tucks the words into his mind beside the others. He walks out into the sunlight, blinking. The streets are filled with people dressed for success, hats high, shoes polished, voices raised in promise. But above them, the sky grows heavier, grayer, though no one seems to notice. That week, a man in a heavy coat and stiff collar drops a rolled-up advertisement on Harrow's desk. It promises something called the Millionaires Club, a private investor circle claiming secret methods, guaranteed picks, and untold returns. Harrow glances at it once, sighs, and tosses it into the wastebasket. But the office buzzes. Whispers ripple about a new ticker extension for at-home investors, about a neighbor's cousin making $500 overnight in copper stocks. Even the shoeshine boy downstairs talks about getting in on General Motors. Anthony watches this shift like watching the tide roll in, slowly at first, then crashing in all at once. People speak faster, eat faster, borrow faster. Brokers talk of champagne breakfasts and multiple summer homes. One grins while telling Anthony he took out a second mortgage just to buy more shares in a radio company. "It's modern magic," he says, adjusting his gold cufflink. He passes a woman selling apples on the corner who used to clean offices but left after her brother made a killing in aviation stocks. "Why work?" she laughs. "Money makes itself now." By Friday, the exchange is full of shouting, not panic, not yet, but frantic energy. Phones ring off the hook. Clerks move with such speed, they blur. Anthony delivers a single telegram to the back office and sees 3 men hunched over a desk, frowning. The mood has thinned, but no one dares speak it aloud. He meets Harrow in the hallway. The older man is pale, worn. He grips Anthony's shoulder. "The worst part of a bubble isn't the burst," he murmurs. "It's the silence right before. You'll know it when the laughter dies just a second too soon." Anthony nods, but the words chill him. Outside, the clouds have gathered like thick wool over the skyline. People still smile, still shake hands, but a hush follows their steps. Anthony pulls his coat tighter and walks on. A few nights later, the exchange hosts an exclusive investor gala uptown. Anthony isn't invited, of course, but he delivers a message to the venue, an opulent ballroom lit by chandeliers that seem to drip gold. The entrance is flanked by polished cars, drivers in uniform, and guests in tuxedos and gowns. He glimpses laughter, clinking glasses, and jazz that rises like perfume. Through the grand doorway, he hears someone proclaim, "We've tamed the market. This time it's different." The crowd laughs. Anthony lingers just a second longer than he should, letting the scene etch itself in his memory. Later that evening, he walks past a newspaper stand. The headlines are unchanged, still full of soaring numbers and economic miracles. But buried in the lower corner is a quiet note: small banks tightening lending requirements. It's tiny, easily missed. Anthony folds the observation into the growing notebook inside his mind. He's been collecting details, fragments. The banker who looked nervous counting out bills. The wealthy widow who suddenly sold half her shares. The whispers of consolidation, of quiet defaults tucked behind closed doors. Then one evening, his mother mentioned something he's never heard before. The price of bread, up 2 cents, just a little, nothing alarming. But Anthony freezes. "Only 2 cents, she says. "Probably nothing." But Anthony has learned, small changes are rarely meaningless. They are early footsteps of something larger, and they never walk alone. In his dreams that night, the ticker machines don't hum. They pulse, faster, louder, and then silence. The next morning, Anthony returns to the exchange earlier than usual. The sun hasn't yet cleared the rooftops, and steam still curls from the sewer grates. A faint haze clings to the streets, and even the newsboys speak in softer tones. The mood feels different, not broken, not fearful, but stretched. He stands outside for a while, watching the building before stepping inside. The marble floors reflect a dozen hurried shadows. A few brokers nod to him in passing, their usual brightness muted. A clerk who always joked with him doesn't look up today. He just scans a sheet, frowns, and folds it quietly into a drawer. Anthony delivers a bundle of telegrams to Harrow, who thanks him absently. His desk is cleaner than usual. The usual stacks of reports and trade slips are gone, replaced by a single slip of paper and a steaming cup of black coffee. Harrow doesn't look up. They're tightening credit, he says quietly. Big firms, lending less, not saying why. Anthony hesitates. Is that bad? It's not good, Harrow replies, but it's not panic. Not yet. He finally glances up. It's the part where people convince themselves they still have time. Anthony leaves the office with those words echoing in his chest. The streets are as busy as ever, but the sounds feel thinner. The certainty has started to crack, not loudly, but like hairline fractures in glass. Anthony lingers by the steps of the exchange, reluctant to leave. He's always been invisible in this world, just the messenger, just the boy. But lately he feels like a quiet observer at the edge of something sacred and unstable. The rhythm of the city is offbeat now, not broken, not yet, but uncertain. He walks home past shuttered shops. One, a clothier he's known since he was a child, has posted a sign, "Closed for inventory." He knows that means trouble. When they reopen, the windows will be emptier. That night, he eats dinner quietly. His mother speaks with optimism about the holidays. Maybe this year, a real roast, she says. Anthony smiles, but his mind is elsewhere. In his dreams, the buildings of Wall Street sway like trees in wind, and Anthony is the only one who sees it. Everyone else laughs beneath a golden sky as the pavement shifts beneath them. He tries to call out, but no voice comes. End of Act 2. Act 3, The Fall begins. The morning of October 24th, 1929 arrives without fanfare. The sky is unusually bright, and a cool breeze drifts down from the Hudson. But inside the exchange, the tension is thick. Anthony feels it the moment he steps through the doors. No one greets him today. Phones ring without pause. Clerks whisper. Harrow isn't at his desk. A paperboy rushes through the crowd shouting headlines that feel like thunder in Anthony's ears. Market tumbles. Billions lost in hours. Brokers begin pacing faster. Shouting grows louder. The ticker machines sound more frantic now, like they're choking, gasping. Anthony delivers a telegram to a broker who barely glances at him before tearing it open with shaking hands. Another man mutters a prayer. The crowd inside the exchange, always loud, now feels like a river overflowing its banks. He watches as a stock runner drops his clipboard and just stares. Another leans against the wall, breathless. Anthony sees Harrow finally arrive, his coat undone, his eyes wide. It's started, Harrow whispers. Anthony doesn't ask what. He knows. Anthony stays rooted in place as the storm builds. He watches a trader slam his fist against the wall, papers falling in a slow arc to the marble floor. A woman on the phone gasps and covers her mouth, eyes wide with disbelief. Another man stumbles out of a side office, mumbling about losing everything, in a single morning. By mid-afternoon, the ticker tape is 6 hours behind. The machines can't keep up. The numbers come in waves, each more brutal than the last. Anthony walks past a chalkboard posted near the main floor. Someone scrawls figures so quickly, they smear. He catches snippets of arguments, denials, urgent whispers of loans being called in. This is temporary, one broker mutters to himself. Just a correction. But the words feel hollow in the charged air. Anthony finds Harrow again near a stairwell. The old man's tie is crooked, his hands shaking slightly. This isn't panic, Harrow says flatly. Panic comes tomorrow. This is disbelief. And all at once Anthony sees it, the weight of imagined fortunes now crashing into reality. For months, they had built castles from paper and wind. Now, the wind was gone. Anthony drifts from room to room, not delivering anything now, just watching. Some men slump at their desks. Others stand at windows. One older broker silently tears a check in half and lets the pieces fall. The sounds of trading still echo, but they've become mechanical. Movements repeated out of habit, not hope. Outside, a small crowd gathers at the steps of the exchange. Some are curious, others concerned. A woman clutches the arm of a man who stares blankly into the entrance, as if waiting for someone to come out and explain how it all went wrong. Anthony stands near them, unnoticed. He sees how even the light looks different today. Sharper, cold. The city feels less certain, as if its foundation has shifted. He walks to the waterfront that evening, where the breeze off the river is sharp and briny. Ferry horns moan across the water. As the last light fades behind the skyline, he watches the buildings, giants silhouetted in silence. Their lights blink on one by one, trying to defy the dark. Anthony returns home that night in silence. The streets feel slower, as though the very air resists movement. He climbs the stairs to his family's apartment, every step heavier than usual. His mother greets him with a warm smile, but her eyes linger a little longer on his face. He sits at the table, picking at his food. Outside, a siren wails in the distance. Inside, the only sound is the tick of the wall clock. Time passes, but no one seems to move. His sister asks if something is wrong. He shakes his head. He doesn't have the words. Not yet. In his room, Anthony opens his satchel. He takes out the slip of paper he's carried for months, the one with Harrow's words. It's not the stock you own, it's the story you believe about it. He reads it again. The story had changed. The next morning, Anthony opens the door to the exchange but doesn't step inside. Instead, he stands quietly under the awning and watches. The building looms ahead, still solemn, still powerful, but hollow now, as if all the belief it once held has drained out. He turns away and walks instead toward the post office. On the way, he passes shuttered shops, drawn curtains, and people talking low on corners. A sense of quiet reckoning fills the streets. Not anger, not despair, something softer, the beginning of understanding. At the river again, he watches a boat pull away from the dock. He thinks of stories, the ones people tell themselves, the ones that rise, fall, and leave behind silence. For the first time, he wonders what comes next. End of Act 3. Act 4, The Aftermath, October 25th, 1929. The sun struggles to pierce the heavy gray veil above Manhattan. Anthony steps into the cool morning air, his breath a pale mist curling from his lips. The streets are quieter than they've ever seemed. Only the distant clatter of wagon wheels and the muted creak of harnesses break the hush. He pulls his coat tighter, the damp fabric clinging to his shoulders, and makes his way to the tenement, each step measured, as though he's learning to walk again in this changed world. Inside their cramped apartment, his mother offers a small, wistful smile as she ladles steaming oatmeal into chipped bowls. His father's absence lingers in the silence, gone these many years, but Anthony senses him in every quiet moment, guiding his resolve. His sister, her dark hair sprawled over the table, watches her brother with solemn eyes. After yesterday's turmoil, the weight of adult worries seems to have seeped into even her childhood. They share breakfast in near silence. The porridge, humble and sustaining, tastes richer today. Its warmth a silent testament to their family's resilience. Anthony pushes his bowl aside and gazes at his mother's lined face. She must carry burdens deeper than the market's fluctuations, dreams for her children, concerns for the rising cost of coal and bread. He reaches across the table, squeezes her hand, and says softly, "We will find our way." Her eyes glisten, and she nods. With his satchel on his back, Anthony steps into the street again. The city's pulse continues, though now at a cautious pace. Shopkeepers chalk new prices on windows, their strokes hesitant. A butcher hesitates before lifting his cleaver. A hatter rearranges caps that fewer passers-by can afford. At the corner newsstand, Anthony buys 2 papers, one for the whispered optimism of a slight market rebound, the other for the stark caution of credit tightening. He pauses before the stock exchange, its grand columns draped in morning shadow. The facade, once a symbol of unbridled ambition, now stands as a monument to humankind's fragile confidence. A small group of clerks and brokers chat in low tones on the marble steps, trading observations rather than orders. Anthony watches the exchange of voices where only hours before there was shouting and frenzy. Determined, he heads toward Mr. Harrow's office. The door swings open on its own accord, the wood creaking like an old friend greeting him back. Harrow's desk is a scene of calm amidst the storm, a single desk lamp illuminating stacks of correspondence, client inquiries, and ledgers marked with red ink. Harrow looks up, weariness etched in the lines around his eyes. Anthony reaches into his satchel and pulls out the folded slip of paper, Harrow's own wisdom reunited with him. "You carry more than messages now," Harrow says, his voice a blend of pride and exhaustion. "You carry hope." They speak of the crash, not as abstract numbers, but as human experiences. Harrow recounts a widow in Jersey City who lost her life savings, a young clerk who left home for opportunity and now fears returning bankrupt, a line of farmers in Iowa unable to settle loans on drought-stricken land. Each story chips away the shine of profit and reveals the human cost. Anthony listens, his heart heavy, but also resolute. He realizes his role is shifting, from messenger boy to witness, from observer to storyteller. October 26, 1929. Dawn finds Anthony at the Bowery Missions, where soup is served before breakfast time. The line is longer than he's ever seen. Men in worn coats, women clutching blankets to shield against the morning chill, children huddled at their parents' sides. Volunteers ladle broth into bowls, offering smiles and soft words to those who have none. Anthony volunteers today, serving steaming bowls with hands that tremble only slightly. Each thank you he receives reminds him that kindness can nourish as effectively as food. He meets a man named Samuel, who once ran a small import business and now stands anonymously in line. Their brief conversation about shattered dreams and the determination to begin anew stirs something profound in Anthony. Later, he sits on the steps of St. Paul's Chapel, gazing at the skeletal towers of the Exchange in the distance. He contemplates the delicate balance between risk and responsibility. In his mind, he outlines a new story, one that transcends ledgers and margins, that honors both the folly of unchecked speculation and the courage to rebuild. October 27, 1929. Anthony returns to his neighborhood. At Sullivan Street Bakery, he speaks with Mrs. Rosenthal, who remembers better days of community warmth and Saturday buns. Now she offers bread nonetheless, sliding one loaf across the counter for Anthony's family and refusing payment. He leaves with tears in his eyes and a promise to repay kindness in kind. At the Jewish settlement house, he learns of relief efforts for immigrant families. He spends the afternoon sorting donated clothing and teaching young children to read simple telegrams. Practice for both reading and writing, he jokes. The children giggle, and for moments the weight of the crash recedes into the background of playful chatter. He pens a letter to Mr. Harrow detailing these stories of charity and connection. True wealth, he writes, is found not in numbers that rise and fall, but in hands that reach out when towers tremble. Harrow's reply comes the next morning, a single line. Your words will carry far. October 28th to 30th, 1929. The weekend brings both hardship and glimmers of hope. Anthony divides his time between the tenement, where he helps his mother tally needs and rations, and the city's relief centers, where he distributes soup and blankets. He hears rumors of government meetings in Washington, debates over whether to suspend gold convertibility, to open credit lines to banks. But these discussions seem distant, more the realm of cautious whispers than immediate relief. One afternoon, Anthony finds himself drawn to the waterfront again. He boards a ferry for Staten Island, not for business, but for perspective. As the boat plows through the Hudson, he watches New York's skyline recede, its silhouette both imposing and human. Passengers share snacks and conversations about lost fortunes and family resilience. A teacher on board reads aloud from Shakespeare, reminding everyone that storms pass and new dawns always arrive. By the time he returns at dusk, Anthony carries renewed determination. He sees New York not as an engine of profit alone, but as a tapestry of lives interwoven by compassion and perseverance. October 31st, 1929. The anniversary of Halloween arrives with a soft drizzle, but Anthony doesn't chase hidden ghosts. Instead, he revisits the newsstand, buys a copy of the New York Times, and reads the tentative optimism on the front page. Stocks rebound in early trading. Banks open with caution. Community relief efforts underway. A cautious smile tugs at his lips. That evening, he gathers his mother and sister by the hearth, a small fire in a cast-iron stove, and reads them passages from a pamphlet he helped produce at the settlement house. Letters of hope, stories from October's turmoil. The room fills with the crackle of paper and tender laughter. His sister's eyes shine. His mother leans back, satisfied. Anthony retires to his room and writes once more in his journal. His entry spills across 2 pages, reflections on trust, the folly of unchecked ambition, and the resilience of ordinary people. He drafts another telegram, not meant to be sent but to be pinned above his desk. When belief falters, we build with grace. November 1st, 1929. Markets open with cautious fluctuations rather than wild swings. Brokers speak in softer tones, acknowledging uncertainty with humility. Harrow invites Anthony to visit the exchange in the afternoon. There, Anthony observes deliberate choices, loans extended at lower rates, asset purchases at conservative valuations, cautious optimism tempered by lessons learned. Harrow presents Anthony with a bound collection of the telegrams he delivered during the past week, a chronicle of human stories interspersed with market updates. Your notebook of observations will become history's account, Harrow says. Cherish it. Anthony accepts it reverently. As dusk settles, Anthony returns to the riverbank. The skyline's lights glitter like distant stars, and he feels their reflections ripple beneath him. The water, cold and gray, moves steadily forward, a reminder that life flows relentless and unwavering. He closes his eyes, breathes in the night air laced with coal smoke and salt, and places a hand over his heart. In the deep silence, he hears the city's pulse, cautious, resolute, and alive. The narrative ends not with grand resolution, but with the quiet assurance that, amid upheaval, stories of compassion, resilience, and unity endure, guiding lights for every dawn to come. End of Act 4. Act 5, A New Dawn, Rebuilding with Wisdom. November 2nd, 1929, a purpose emerges. The newsroom of the Daily Chronicle throbbed with renewed energy as Anthony stepped inside, journal in hand. The roar of typewriters and ringing phones felt like a heartbeat restored, a chorus of hope replacing October's frantic panic. Ms. Levin was waiting, her eyes bright with anticipation. Anthony opened his leather-bound letters of hope and began to speak, not only of stories, but of principles born from hardship. Samuel learned the hard way that no one should place every last coin on a single bet, Anthony began, recalling the import merchant turned soup line volunteer. When his cotton contract collapsed, he lost everything. But by then, he had already started buying small amounts of railroad bonds and investing in local farms. He rebuilt, step by careful step. He wrote late into the night, weaving narrative and strategy. Simple tables showing sector allocation, bullet points on quarterly reviews, and an inset interview with Mr. Harrow on the psychology of spreading risk. He described how Samuel's cautious bond dividends provided not just income, but psychological relief, proof that stability existed even in turmoil. The next morning, as ink still dried on the proofs, the headline, "When one wheel falters, others keep turning," rolled off the presses, catching the eye of readers hungry for actionable insight. Before dusk, Anthony visited a small mechanics guild on East 14th Street, where machinists worried about raw material shortages. He explained diversification by showing how they could balance tool orders across metal shops and woodcarvers, ensuring that if one supplier faltered, production could continue. The mechanics scribbled new procurement lists, their furrowed brows lifting with cautious optimism. November 4th, 1929, Cash as Lifeline. 2 dawns later, Anthony stood behind the counter of Mrs. Rosenthal's bakery, flour-dusted and earnest. She guided him through her ledger with gentle patience, showing how, amidst soaring flour prices, she sold a portion of her business stock to secure grain at twice the usual cost. Watching dough rise beneath her skilled hands, Anthony realized liquidity was as much about mindset as money. The peace of knowing you can act swiftly when it matters most. His article introduced the 3-month reserve rule, contrasting savings accounts' immediate access with the multi-day withdrawal periods of money market funds and government notes. A sidebar broke down average yields, 2% in savings, 3.5% in short-term notes, and the real-world time cost of accessing each. He recounted a clerk who, lacking cash reserves, was forced to sell shares at a loss to pay rent. An avoidable tragedy readers vowed not to repeat. That evening, Anthony hosted a gathering of grocers and small entrepreneurs beneath the bakery's lamplight. By candle and oil lamp, he guided them through ledgers, marking reserve lines in red pencil and teaching them to forecast expenses through seasonal cycles. Grocers nodded, clutched their notebooks and shared murmured gratitude. Today's flower story had already transformed tomorrow's budgets. Later, he shared a private conversation with a tailor who had kept a hidden fund sewn into coat linings. Together, they discussed modern equivalents, hidden pockets for small savings, rotating cash boxes to keep reserves protected. The tailor laughed, promising to teach other seamsters this secure habit. November 8, 1929. Leverage with caution. Raindrops dotted Harrow's office windows as Anthony sketched margin scenarios on yellowed ledger paper. Harrow's voice softened, recounting the midnight phone calls that shattered a widow's financial world. Anthony translated her loss into clear counsel. Establish stop-loss orders so that no position could ever exceed a 10% drop. Maintain margin ratios above 30%, and review borrowing levels weekly. He described the emotional toll, watching unrealized gains evaporate, the panic that interrupts rational thought. His chronicle piece paired narrative with a fold-out leverage ladder, graphing hypothetical portfolio trajectories across 0%, 10%, 20%, and 30% margin usage. Readers traced each line, feeling the tension between ambition and prudence, stamping the centerfold into their ledgers for reference. To reinforce the lesson, Anthony visited a local brokerage where he held a frank Q&A. Investors crowded the small parlor room, asking how to recognize overextension. Anthony guided them through simple mental checklists. If you cannot sleep because of market whispers, your margin is too high. Laughter followed the tension, and he left them resolved to rebalance. November 12, 1929. Power of Community Finance. In a crowded tenement meeting room on Mott Street, Anthony observed the inaugural session of the new cooperative credit union. Neighbors, tailors, dock workers, clerks sat shoulder to shoulder. When Mrs. Villani, the local tailor, stepped forward to request funds for new spools, the room erupted in applause. Anthony captured the scene, hands clasped, promises exchanged, a shared ledger passed among them. His resulting article laid out a step-by-step cooperative blueprint: convene founding members, gather seed capital in modest equal shares, draft bylaws emphasizing mutual accountability, and hold monthly meetings to review loans and interest distributions. He included sample language for loan agreements and a chart comparing cooperative rates 6% to commercial bank rates 12%, plus illustrating how pooled trust cuts costs and strengthens bonds. That afternoon, Anthony walked through Little Italy, explaining cooperative principles to vine growers who typically traded wine for goods. He sketched profit-sharing diagrams on apricot crates, and by evening, 2 packed sellers promised to launch their own lender circles. November 16, 1929, Riding the Market's Tides. By lantern light in St. Mark's Hall, Anthony traced the arc of market cycles on chalkboards, the slow growth of expansion, the exuberant peak, the rapid contraction, and the reflective trough. He drew parallels to agricultural seasons, planting, growth, harvest, and fallow, and emphasized that patience through cycles yielded the richest outcomes. His chronicle essay advocated a decade mindset. Set 10-year financial goals: home purchase, education endowment, retirement. Then invest steadily via dollar-cost averaging, fixed sums each month, regardless of price. He recounted a family that, despite a 1927 speculative frenzy in radio stocks, continued their schedule undeterred, later reaping profits as prices normalized. His words resonated. Consistency, not timing, proved the true investor's ally. Later, Anthony joined a farmers' cooperative meeting in Queens, where he explained how crop and commodity prices follow similar cycles. He drew supply-demand curves on a wooden barn door, helping farmers understand when to store grain and when to sell for peak returns. November 20th to 27th, 1929, workshops across the boroughs. Anthony's worn satchel clinked with chalk and pamphlets as he hopped from trolley to omnibus, eager to reach every corner of Manhattan. In Harlem, he taught school teachers to map household budgets, converting spare dimes into strategic investments in community libraries and after-school programs. In Chinatown, Cantonese interpreters relayed lessons on cooperative credit, inspiring market vendors to pool resources for bulk ingredient purchases. In Little Italy, by flickering lanterns, he demonstrated diversification using family-run pasta shops, investing in grain futures, and shared shipping cooperatives. One night in an Irish parish hall, neighbors gathered on wooden pews, drafting emergency fund plans by candlelight. An elderly matron, her voice quavering, pledged to open a personal savings account for the first time. Anthony stayed late, sipping tea from chipped mugs, absorbing the hushed gratitude that echoed in the rafters. His final workshop was in Brooklyn, where he guided a group of factory workers through a mock margin exercise, using colored chips to illustrate how leverage amplifies both gains and losses. The workers left with newfound respect for cautious borrowing and practical strategies to negotiate with union funds. November 30th, 1929, Community Chronicle edition. The Chronicle's special pullout, titled Letters and Lessons, landed on stoops like a promise of renewal. 8 pages thick, it interwove Anthony's narrative vignettes with detailed worksheets, personal portfolio templates, reserve calculation tables, cooperative meeting agendas, margin ratio calculators, goal-setting planners, and a glossary of financial terms. Newsboys hawked it with pride. Librarians placed copies on reading tables. Union halls posted it on bulletin boards. Reading circles formed in taverns and parish basements, where participants debated allocation strategies and drafted bylaws. Housewives and clerks alike found themselves poring over charts they never dreamed they'd understand, forging communal action plans that transcended mere survival. Added to the edition was a special fold-out map marking community resource centers, free legal aid, cooperative offices, soup kitchens, and credit union branches, guiding readers to both knowledge and support. December 5, 1929, Reflections by the Hudson. On a crisp dawn, Anthony walked the riverbank, pamphlet in hand, watching ferry horns echo across the gray water. He paused at a weathered bench and read letters from grocers who now had cash cushions to pay their staff, teachers who spun new cooperatives for evening classes, carpenters who used margin guidelines to complete contracts despite erratic supply costs. Each testimonial felt like a beacon of resilience lighting the misty morning. He opened his journal to the final pages, reading his own handwritten reflections on every lesson. Diversification like a spider's web of security, liquidity as a steadfast anchor, leverage as both tool and trap, cooperation as communal scaffolding, long-term vision as the compass through storms. With a firm hand, he penned one last thought. True wealth flows where compassion and knowledge meet. End of Act 5. Outro. As the first snowflakes dust the city streets, Anthony closes his journal and strides into the twilight. The lights of New York glow soft and warm against the winter sky, each window a testament to hard-won recovery. If Anthony's journey has inspired you and you're ready to build your own path to financial resilience, please tap the like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell for more stories and insights. Share your experiences in the comments. Your voice could be the spark for someone else's rebirth.